So, hello and welcome. My name is Katz, and today I will be unboxing the Venetian Tarot by Eugene Vinitsky. No props, no books, just me and a tarot deck. So, Venice is one of the world's most renowned cities, built on a lagoon. Over 1,000 years it's been there, one of the most romantic cities in the world, one of the most structurally interesting places to visit. I've been there a couple of times, both times in beautiful company, and it certainly has a place in my heart. And it's surprising that people haven't really used it as a source of tarot before, because obviously tarot originated in Italy. And just as a side note, I'd recommend, if you're interested in the history of Venice, the series that was on the BBC in 2004 and was called Francesco's Venice. And is now available probably fairly cheaply on a DVD. I don't know if that's available in the States, but certainly it's a fascinating series and gives you a lot of the history and the background of Venice by someone whose family has been living in the lagoon for 1,000 years. It's a remarkable place, and I'm looking forward to taking a look at the deck and see how that captures the spirit of the place. I believe Eugene lives in Geneva, another beautiful location on the planet, so it'll be interesting to see how that location also informs the deck. So this is entirely raw, as they say, unplugged. I'm just going to open the box and see what strikes me about it. I waited maybe about a month since the deck was sent to us, because I wanted to allow time to actually do this properly so I could enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy the unboxing as well, and it inspires you to maybe go and buy the deck and explore it. Let's see. So it's a nice solid box. It opens like so, and it's gorgeous on the inside. The patterning is sort of Renaissance Venetian. The book we'll take a look at in a second is perfectly slotted into the top of it, so it's beautifully designed. And I take the cards out like so. The box has a wonderful stamp on the bottom of it. And what does it say on the back? 22 major and 56 minor arcana deck, created by Swiss artist Eugene Vinitsky. And it talks about the masks of Venice, and has its location Geneva, Switzerland. So let's take these out of the little slider here. There we go. And you'll notice as well that these are gilt. They are gilt edged, so that's a gorgeous touch to them. It's very difficult to get that right, and this looks absolutely perfect. In fact, that way they look like a solid block of gold. Yeah, that's gorgeous. The cards are fairly thick. I don't get too het up about card thickness, but these seem fairly thick, and are on immediate. In fact, they remind me of one of my favourite decks, the Tarot Obscura, which was a limited edition deck published by Adam McLean, and has 22 major arcana, and was sort of almost photographic in style, but very detailed. So here we have the sun. Now, the interesting thing is obviously the landmarks of Venice are in the background. The mask is very prominent in this, and he's holding a triangle here. So one of the things I like to do is, with a new deck, is I'm not afraid to look in the little white book and find out what the symbolism means if I don't understand it. So here it says, so there's a little bit in the book about the sun, a little black and white illustration that says, a shining cavalier wearing a costume and mask of the sun is holding a solar banner and a pyramid with the all-seeing eye. beaming sun high in the sky is illuminating the bell tower in St Mark's Square, that you can see clearly in the background, and clearly the sun is there. The Sun Arcanum embodies the visions of what the greatest triumph and glory, joy and happiness, wealth and prosperity, health and rave of stamina look like. It incorporates all of the most life-affirming things. Everything keeps glittering and rejoicing, all things are successful, dreams come true. It brings clarity, conciliation, self-assurance, and confidence in tomorrow's potential. It only remains first to remember that the sun can cause burns when it is too close. Its absence brings dismal mood and apathy. So there's a nice use of language there. There's a lot of key phrases and descriptions of the card. Not too much about the history in detail, but obviously this is just a little white book rather than an exploration of the whole history of Venice. So it also has the meaning and also the reverse meaning. So reversed, it means a deceleration in growth, health problems, delays in activities, self-admiration. It's the card of the selfie taker upside down. Individualism, vanity, pretense, and complicated relations. So an interesting card to get, both upright and reversed. Okay, so that's one of the major arcana. We can see that they're clearly numbered up the top and have a label down at the bottom. They do have borders around them, but the borders are very stylish, black, simple black with a gold border, and the reverse is reversible and very Venetian. So let's take a look at the next card. Well, let's take a look at a couple in contrast. You can see that these two cards are quite dark, so it's a little bit difficult to see some of the detail in the dark parts of them, but the lighter parts of them really do stand out. So here we have the Tower, and forgive me for the reflection from the screen here, and Temperance. So you can see that they are quite glossy as I reflect them on the screen there. So Temperance, Temperance here. Again, wearing a Venetian mask. There are lots of different styles of mask, and in fact the mask makers of Venice have their own guild and history of mask making. And so here we can see with the Tower, if I wait for the camera to catch up focus of that there, that we can see that that's the famous tower in St Mark's, and possibly the people are being blasted out of it because they've realised just how expensive it is to go up to the top of it, and that's embodies the shock of the tower. It's the shock of what a trip to Venice will do to your actual wallet. So those two cards are really beautiful, really gorgeous. Of the world. It's nice when a card just makes you smile just immediately when you look at it. That is so light, ethereal and gorgeous, and the colours, particularly in contrast to the tower, you can immediately see the contrast of colours here. So that is it's got a really nice light touch to it, and in fact she's holding a mask which looks like a sort of lion's mask above her head, which gives a sort of nakedness to the figure without the figure actually being naked. So that's a really interesting design choice. What else have we got? So we've got all of the twos here. So they are in this deck. Oh, I just must show you the three. In fact, all of the threes. They're really gorgeous cards. Look at this, because I mean, we know from our research in Pamela Coleman Smith's work. So here we have the Three of Wands, and we can see the three ships, and this is just looking out from the square, St Mark's Square, with the winged lion of Venice up on the top of the pillar there, and the ship setting sail. It's an ideal location for that. With our research into Pamela Coleman Smith, realizing that a lot of the cards were designed in Winchelsea and Tenterden, where she was staying at the time. Winchelsea was one of the Cinq, which are the 5 ports that were based around shipbuilding. So Pamela actually drew in, you can see in the Ten of Pentacles, for example, the flag of Winchelsea with the ships on it. There's a sort of castellated ship that is the seal and flag, the banner of Winchelsea. And hence it explains why the shipbuilders are on the 2 and 3 of wands, because that was a nod to Winchelsea and them building the ships. So Venice as a major port and a trading port is the ideal location to still incorporate that touch from that design touch from Pamela Colman Smith. But it also has these figures that are very immediately recognizable as Venetian Renaissance styled in their costumes, and the detail of the costuming is gorgeous. So if we just get that out slightly out of the glare there. Actually, on the table in front of me, they are not glaring or reflecting at all. It's just because they're very close to a bright lit screen to give that reflection. But we can see the level of detail in the foreground, picking up the figure, and the blending of the background really gives a prominence to the figure. And this is an interesting design touch, actually, because I was thinking with the 3 of wands there that it seemed to be perhaps a little unclear. I had to double check whether it was the wands, but now I come to look at the cards, you can see at the bottom of each card there's a nice banner with the symbol of the pentacles, the swords, the cups and the wands down at the bottom of each card. So you can immediately see this is the 2 of pentacles, the 2 of swords, the 2 of cups and the 2 of wands. So we take the 2 of wands here. We can again see a merchant with the plague mask with the 2 of wands there. And I think are they color coded as well? Yeah, they're color coded as well. So it's a really nice little design touches built into the cards, which would be great for beginners because it's not evident to your sitter immediately that that is the 3 of cups, whereas you can see it immediately just by putting those 2 together. It's not like it needs a big banner under the bottom, say 3 of cups. That's a really nice touch. So what else do we have? We have the 4 of swords. So this is possibly in the famous prison that you can go and see just off St. Mark's Square. Here's a guard sat outside the prison. So that carries across that idea of restraint and retreat that the 4 of swords can sometimes carry. Obviously in Pamela Colman Smith's version it has the word Pax hidden in the stained glass window, so there is a sort of peaceful resolution there in a prison. Oh, and immediately recognizable Venetian symbols, these poles built into the clay that sits under the lagoon in order to build the city on, for our 8 of wands here. So that's, and it's got a nice sense of movement. You can actually see that the movement is from the gondola rather than from the poles themselves, which have sort of landed in this particular card. With it being Venice, obviously the sea and the water is pretty close by at all times, and getting closer every day, of course. So here we have the 8 of cups, and we can see the the presence of the water even in the clouds themselves. The pentacles seem to be set more indoors. It'll be interesting to see how Eugene has developed that symbolism for the water perhaps being in the cups, and certainly gone for the wands is an obvious go for the gondola poles and so forth within the city. I quite like the lamp here as well. It's a nice illuminating touch to the 9 of wands. 9 of wands. So, and the figures are absolutely beautiful. They're all very rich and opulent. So we can see here the lady in the Nine of Cups um, with her fan and mask. There's a nice touch of the butterfly that's just up here. It gives a sort of trick of the eye effect and gives a dimension to the picture itself. And I love the opulent tapestry here as well. I don't know how many times I've used the word opulent in this unboxing, but oh my gosh, there are some beautiful cards with images. This card here, the Nine of Swords, take a look at that. You see the figure sort of underneath the shadows of the swords. So in terms of reading, I always read this card as concerns without point, an endless point. Waite called this card the description of the lady in it, someone whose pain or sorrow is like no other. And we discovered that Pamela had painted a picture of Ellen Terry as Juliet in that picture, hence the Cain and Abel picture that's on the bottom of the slab on which Juliet awaits, because her actual quote is something like, I would sooner my head be bashed out by my kinsman's bone than discover this terrible thing that's happened to Romeo. And sure enough, Pamela's painted Cain and Abel bashing each other with the bone down below, because that's exactly the quote in that scene. So I could read this card very easily, transposing that meaning, because the swords are actual shadows. So the concerns and the worries that are afflicting the person are a malady. They're in their own head, and the situation has already arisen. It's interesting as well that there's a nice background image there. I don't know if you can see the intricate detail behind the shadows that looks something like the Last Supper or a resurrection scene. So it would be interesting to find in the book if there's anything for that. So that would be the Nine of Swords. So we take a look at the Nine of Swords, and we'll see if there are any reading methods in the book as well. Yeah, so for this person, a nightmare has turned into something real. Even window grates look like crushing swords to him. So it's nice because the window grates have been turned into crushing swords. Can reality be distorted by the mask he's trying to take off? So there's no particular description of what that background scene is, leaving it up to us to either research a little bit more or make our own interpretation of it. There are three spreads at the beginning, and actually there's a nice little history of Venice just in the first 4 or 5 pages of the little white book here. And there's a couple of tarot spreads, a 3-card spread here, a horseshoe spread, the Celtic cross. Good, it just says the Celtic cross is probably the oldest and most popular spread for reading the tarot. It has survived so long because the layout of the cards is simple and powerful. So again, there's no misinformation in that, which is really nice to see. It doesn't say this was used by the ancient Celts or has been in use for 500 years, which is, thank you, Eugene, for not continuing on some of the misinformation about the Celtic cross. So we can see here with the 10 of Wands, instead of carrying the 10 wands, this masked figure is carrying an awful lot of masks in a basket on these gorgeous cards, and the colours are absolutely stunning. And again, the colour and the background and the attention to detail and the perspective and the scope of difference between the minor figures literally in the minor cards and the background is beautiful. It gives a very magical sense to the place. So the figures here are almost secondary to the environment in which they are moving, living and breathing. So it really brings the sense of place to the reading itself. And we'll try reading in a second. Interestingly enough, the ace here is far more almost symbolic in nature. It's not so much of a scenic, although one would guess, that's not an actual representation of something that actually happened. But here it seems more symbolic. The symbols seem far more clear cut and distinct from each other than some of the other cards. Okay, let's just quickly take a look at some of the court cards. So we've got the king. Let's find a king and a queen. See how they match each other. So here we have the Queen of Wands. Which is very beautiful, and the King of Pentacles. Very clearly an Emperor, King of Pentacles type, so there's no mistaking. And again, we've got the same use of the banner for the emblems down below. So some people like to see the Death card in a deck in case it freaks out their clients or is suitable. So here's the Death card. That's suitably mysterious, sort of inviting in a way, in that death is just another journey. So that's an interesting take on death. And a lot of people like the Star card and the High Priestess. So let's find those cards. The Hierophant is perhaps suitably enough for Venetian history. Maybe a picture of the Pope there. And the Doge of Venice had an almost separate power base, even though religious constraints did apply. Venice was literally a law unto itself for a long time, so it's a nice, less, what's the word? There's a sort of nod to the dress-up nature of authority within the Hierophant card itself. Justice is interesting because it uses the famous Bridge of Sighs, where prisoners were taken from the court to the prison, which is a very famous location in Venice. So that's a very clear image of justice. Right, let's see if we can find the High Priestess. So here's the High Priestess, and the Star card, which are sort of totem cards for tarot readers themselves. Perhaps because we use our intuition to bring hope, which is the two meanings of these two cards. So we can see those two cards are, again, suitably mysterious and beautiful. We've also got the moon symbolism, and the two pillars have been neatly transposed to two gondola poles, mooring poles as well. So very easy use of the symbols. Some themed decks tend to be very forced in their utilization of the symbology, but this deck seems to have done it very easily. And I'm loving the fact that masks themselves are so intrinsic to the symbolism of a tarot reading, in getting through someone's personality to find out what's really going on underneath the mask of their actions, behavior, thinking, symbolism, behavior, and so forth. And the fact that Venice is based on the lagoon itself, so there's a lot of shipbuilding and transportation and celebratory symbolism built into the nature of the place itself. So it's a beautiful idea and concept, and it's been beautifully executed. So I'm just going to do a quick 3-card reading, and I'll keep shuffling the deck for a moment, and I'm going to do it for a real question. So okay, so I'm going to do it for a personal question, if you'll indulge me, rather than do it for a made-up thing. And my question is about a current situation, whether that is going to, the best way of working it out, the best way of actually acting in the next 3 months in order to get the best out of a particular situation. So the first card I'm going to draw is for the past. We'll do a simple past, present and future. In fact, let's take a look at Eugene's book and see what his 3-card reading is. But yeah, past, present and future. Past events and the possible outcome is the 3rd card. So let's take a look at that. The first card for the past is the 3 of Pentacles. So the 3 of Pentacles. So we can see the 3 stars shining in. So let's take a look at Eugene's book to actually see what that would tell us if we were an absolute beginner in reading the cards. And we had to look it up. It is night. A craftsman is tirelessly working at a gondola making workshop. He's fulfilling a commission and referring to some drawings. 3 stars are lighting his workshop, symbolizing the 3 components of success. This is interesting. Discipline, planning, and industriousness. Is the overwork going to prevent the hard worker from completing his project in time? The meaning is hard work, expertise, starting a business, construction, and profit. So indeed, that does refer very interestingly to the situation that I'm asking about. So in the past, there was hard work, starting a business, construction, and profit. And I particularly like the idea that this throws in of discipline, planning, and hard work. Discipline, planning, and hard work. But that's in the past. So let's see how the present situation has transpired. So transposed there for some reason. As we're thinking about the transposition of real-world locations and environments to symbolism, then to be interpreting those real-world things as symbols, interpreting them into another situation that's happening in real time, that is not happening in Venice in the Renaissance. That's a transposition of meaning from one entire situation to another, which is what the tarot does. It's like a key between a real world transposed into symbols, transposed back into the real world, and that's what the key symbolism of the tarot is all about. So let's there are many tools to actually do that with. Other forms of divination don't really do that because you are viewing images in a bowl or something like that, for example. I guess I Ching is similar, maybe runes as well, but tarot is certainly preeminent in that because they are illustrated images. Oh, and we're back to the 3 of Pentacles is still at the bottom there. So one more shuffle. So the present moment here is now represented by interesting, the 5 of Pentacles. The 5 of Pentacles. Now, excuse me, usually when I'm reading with a new deck, with new symbols, compared to, say, the Waite Smith or the Thoth, I try to avoid, I used to try and think, what was the Waite Smith card? In fact, once I did a gallery reading and I had a picture of the Waite Smith cards in front of me in order to remind myself sometimes of the obscure symbolism in the deck I was demonstrating from the artists, which was very abstract. And I kept going back to the Waite Smith images to remind myself what the card was all about. And after a few readings like that, I realized that actually you just look at the deck itself and read fresh from the deck, and it will give you new insight back onto the other decks that you've been using instead of trying to force it into your existing framework. In fact, there's a famous quote about the mysteries. The mind must be enlarged to understand the mysteries, not the mysteries made small to fit into the mind. And I think that's the same when you get a new tarot deck, that you should expand your mind around the new symbols rather than try and force it into the symbols that you already know. So here we have the 5 of Pentacles, and we have 3 figures marching along, and they seem that they are leaning on their poles. One may be blind, and the first character has a bell, which is only shown very small on the Pamela Smith image, because it's around somebody's neck. And Wade describes them as mendicants in that particular deck. Mendicants being people who have chosen their poverty as a spiritual way of life. So let's see what Eugene has to say about the Five of Pentacles and whether he's taken up that sort of meaning. So we've gone from the Three of Pentacles in the past to the Five of Pentacles in the present. So some blind beggars are dragging themselves along the square and past the palace. They are holding firmly onto each other. A bell in the leader's hand announces their coming. Will it help them get help or find the way to shelter? The meaning is limitations, losses, failures, financial disaster, concerns, worries, hard times and diseases. So again, we could see that as a very obvious reading going all the way from the Three of Pentacles, start of a business, to the Five of Pentacles, financial disaster. I should point out that that is not a specific reading of the current situation. It's not entirely a financial disaster, but there have been strange financial constraints placed on the business that I'm asking about because of a certain hurricane a year and a little bit ago, which entirely dented progress from the wonderful 3 all the way to the 5. But of course, that's progress in any business as you move from one phase into another. So what do we do about it? Now, this is where the cards really have to prove their mettle. Because when you do a reading like this for somebody and you say, well, I can see the situation has gone from this situation to another, and that's why you're having a reading, because it's a challenging situation, they really want to know what to do. What are you going to do about it? What advice can the cards give that is not only relevant, but also useful and also applicable, something that you can actually manage to do? Some decks tend to be too abstract, and they tell you, to, I don't know, focus on your higher self or something, and they really don't bring it down to a sort of practical level that then is up to the reader, and then you get into the danger of giving some, half-assed financial advice, practical advice, even, God forbid, health advice out of one's own head, when in fact it should be coming straight from the cards. If the cards can't carry that symbolism and that interpretation, you have to push it into something, then you're far more at risk at giving just advice out of your own head than actually reading the card itself. So a deck designer has to be very mindful. It's not a easy task to design a tarot deck that is useful as a tool, because it's not just art, it is also a tool. So let's shuffle around and see what the advice for the future position is. We're at the halfway mark, the half an hour mark of this reading, of this video, so thank you for sticking with me if you've stuck this far. It's a gorgeous deck. I knew I'd like it, but I didn't know how much I'd like it, but I like it a lot. So, and I will definitely be reading with it. So here we go. Right, okay, do we think I've shuffled enough? It's hard to tell sometimes, isn't it? Beginners ask this question a lot. They say, how will I know when it's right to lay the cards out? Sometimes what I do is I imagine that another hand is holding the cards and sort of shifting them around for me. And there, it just bent that one slightly for me, so I know I've finished. Sometimes I feel like it's just sorting them out a little bit for me, and I have to wait for it to finish. So, the future position, the advice card, is the 2. Is the 2 of Swords, which is this lady in between these two figures here. So again, a good way of reading for yourself is with a brand new deck, because, and going straight from the booklet, because then it gives you advice, cold advice, straight out of the book that's a little bit more difficult to reinterpret inside your own head. Oh, and the book has at the back other tarot decks by Eugene. There's a money tarot deck and the World in Colours tarot deck. It looks at an entirely different sort of design, which is interesting. And a little bit about the artist at the back. There's Eugene there. Thank you for producing such a wonderful deck, Eugene. It's really a gorgeous piece of work. So where were we? Two of Swords. Two of Swords. Right, some people are having an argument in the street. They are dressed as Commedia dell'arte characters. They're rivals. The ladies raised up hands seem to appeal to reason. So, interesting. So the meaning of the card then is friendship, passion, concord, and alliance, submission, agreement, rigorous reflections. So the solution to the situation is to make an alliance and perhaps even submit a little bit. In the context of the question, it's to do with delegation, I feel, and to make more accords and agreements with other people, perhaps partners within the workspace itself, and to have some rigorous reflections, some reviews and tidying up of existing projects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this card out for a couple of days, unless I decide to use the rest of the deck for readings in the next 2 days, and just contemplate it as offering a solution to the situation. And because I've got to make some decisions anyway over the next few days, I will refer to this card before I make the decision to see if it resonates with it, see if the card sort of, like a tuning fork, agrees and resonates with the decision, or whether it feels that I need to change the decision to accord more with the energy of the card itself. So again, I've been doing an out of the box with the Venetian Tarot by Eugene Vinitsky, and it is a absolutely gorgeous deck that I thought I love, and I do indeed love it. So straight out of the box, I really feel very passionate about this opulent deck. And the images are already, I can see these on a reading table or sending to somebody. You get the immediate feeling of setting off there, the Eight of Cups, into a new horizon. So it's a beautiful deck. I'd highly recommend tarot lovers, art lovers, tarot readers themselves grab a hold of a copy. I don't necessarily endorse decks or anything. Tarot is a very subjective thing. There are decks that people rave about that I just don't get, and there are decks that I love and I show people and they go meh. So, but for me, this deck is really gorgeous. Thank you again, Eugene, for producing it. It's a very difficult job to pull off a tarot deck that is going to be useful and stands the test of time and is artistic, and it's not just a what's the word, a sort of fad or something that's a bit of a novelty item that doesn't have long-standing value. And I think this deck will indeed have long-standing value. So thanks a lot everyone for watching this. We'll be doing more out of the deck, out of the box reviews of decks as we produce the Arcatia site. We're doing a lot of work on Arcatia at the moment, writing a lot of original material for it that will teach tarot in a very deep experiential way that has never been seen before. We're having to come up with new ways of teaching tarot for an entirely new generation of readers, and also a slightly existing generation of readers that want a new way of really exploring tarot that they haven't experienced before. And we're doing that on Arcatia, so if you do want to pop around to that site, it's www.arcatia, artia.com, and join us there. We're launching February the 2nd, 2018, which may seem a little while away, but it's not that long away now. And you find out all of the details on that site. So thanks a lot again for watching. If you're interested in learning about the tarot, then join the Tarot Association at www.tarotassociation.com. We have 10 hours worth of training videos, even for starters, 13 magazines and all sorts of goodies there waiting for you to take your tarot to new levels right from the word go. So thanks a lot again. Thanks a lot, Eugene, and look forward to seeing you all again. Bye for now.